that maybe your legs felt longer, your arms felt longer, and that length that you had meant, just as I said, there was more contact with the ground, softer contact with the ground, more even contact with the ground. So again, really beginning to understand, not just in our sensory motor experience, but in our thinking and our feeling. How do I feel when I've got more length? And not just length, but width. There's something about this combination often of length that also gives us a little bit more width and depth. And then for a moment, just as we did on the first day, could you, wherever you are at the moment, just have less contact with the ground? Where on you, where are the parts for you that you would normally not have quite as much contact with the ground? Maybe it's something in your wrists or your shoulders, behind your ankles or your knees. So it could be something in your limbs that normally you shorten a little bit, and you could feel what that does to my torso and my breathing. Because we're going to really continue to explore. So again, just feel if your arms and legs just shorten up just a little, which reduces their contact with the ground. What happens in your torso, in your neck? Because we're really going to keep playing with this idea of how your limbs can become longer. They can be moved by your torso. And bend your knees up. And just see how it would be to do a pelvic circle this morning. And just see, would you do more a lift or a roll? And again, a lift is when there's just one part of your pelvis touching at any one time. A roll is when there's a bigger surface of your pelvis touching. And just feel as you do that what happens in your hips and your knees, how soft and responsive are your legs. Your feet are still standing, but somehow your knees are responding, your ankles are responding. You might feel one knee goes a little bit forward or back at some stage. They might get a little apart or together, all those movements we've been doing. But you're still weight-bearing on your feet. What happens in your arms and your shoulder girdles? Can you feel they respond to your pelvic clock, your pelvic circle? What happens up in your first rib? And what happens in your sternum? Do you get the sense that your sternum and ribs have a little bit of an independent life from your spine? how the weight shifts over your shoulder girdles and how the curves in your neck change. You're beginning to find more and more this ability for your neck to soften, so that when you made this pelvic circle, your head would automatically make a circle. And this is where it gets sort of fun to explore. So how would you stop your head making a circle? What do you have to do up in those upper ribs? And it might just be a very soft hold, but you must be doing something to stop your head making a circle. Some level of inhibition going on. You must be doing something to stop a feeling of a circle around your shoulder blades. There must be some level of inhibition going on. And again, are you getting this feeling of, with your pelvic circle, this ability, when would your belly, low belly go forward? And then could you do the same movement with the soles of your feet together? Really make sure your feet are against each other. And do your pelvic circle there. So your knees are wide. And feel, what do your legs do now? Where your feet don't have the ground quite as much to push into. Where you've really got to find how to get even a little bit more movement from your pelvis. And again, really notice, is your head following still in a circle, or has it lost some of its ability to circle in this position? And again, it's you discovering where you're stopping that movement going through. What part of yourself you're not allowing through long habits of use. And is there something about the movement of your chin, its ability to make a circle, especially your chin going up and down and left and right, that tells you something about the mobility in your upper back? And again, play. What happens if you keep your chin more in one place? What do you have to stop moving to do that? And then allow your chin to move again. So that really, when you're making a pelvic circle, every part of you should be making a circle. Every part of you. You can feel the weight rolling in a circle around your right arm, your left arm. The weight shifting constantly, nothing fixed in space. Because this lift of your pelvis is getting ready to take you in a direction. So as soon as we start lifting the pelvis and engaging more activity, our brain is getting a message, I'm going to go somewhere. And again, you're always looking for the aesthetic appreciation. Okay, pause. Open your eyes, just find a partner near you. So one of you will stay lying and the other one will go and sit at the other person's head. So one of you will stay lying and the other one will go and sit at the person's head. Everyone got a partner? Has anyone not got a partner? Has anyone not got a partner? I'll do it with you, Anastasia, it's fine. Yeah? Because I think all the... We're just going to observe and do a little bit of... It's, yeah, not a big deal. So, person with their legs up first, person lying. And what you're going to do, it's really simple. They're going to do their pelvic clock and you're simply observing how this movement of their pelvis goes through them. Yeah? How the movement of the pelvis goes through them. So we're just observing first. And we're starting at the head, but you're going to observe it from their head, from their feet, and from each side, and just see if those different perspectives give you any more information. So we're really interested generally, the general is how the pelvis puts the movement through them, and the specific is what happens up here. In the first rib, in the shoulder girdle. Okay, so person who's lying, off you go. So the big picture is how this circle of their pelvis, this pelvic lift, goes through them, and you're getting a general idea. Are there some parts of them that look more involved in the image and some parts of them that look less involved in the image? Some parts where there looks to be real clarity, and other parts where maybe, usually you'll see it most in their head. Their head doesn't look as if it's as clear about where it's being taken by their pelvis. And you can move your point of view. So you're looking up and down, left and right. And just noticing if the different points of observation give you different information. Person who's lying, of course, rest whenever you want. And hopefully the person who's lying's also paying attention to that foreground background. Yeah? How does the movement of their pelvis feel it goes through them? And specifically what's happening up in there. First rib, upper sternum, shoulder girdle. And when their head feels more or less connected to that movement. Great. Okay. Change over. It's that simple. You can watch anyone you like, Anastasia. Just we'll go back to them at the end. So you just need to have a person that we're going to go back to them at the end of the ATM. So you just need someone that you can, yeah. So which parts of their pelvic circle just appear clearer to them? And this is an interesting question, but it's a really nice one to give. How much thinking is going on in their system? How much thinking compared to sensing? And just really notice by changing perspective, by changing your perspective, do you see anything different? Does it bring your attention to maybe different shapes they're making? When you're looking from up or down, the top or bottom or left or right. Do their arms look as included as their legs? Does their head look ready to follow? And if their head does get a little, where would you say is the point that confusion comes in? And this is something you're going to sense on yourself. You want to sort of be in their world, if you like. You can imagine being them. If you were doing the movement the way they do it, which are the parts that feel really clear? Okay, and leave it and go back to your mat. And we'll see what happens as we go into this lesson. Okay, so bending your knees. And just as we did yesterday, can you find a place where your pelvis would be really light to lift, where you want your feet to be, where it just feels like your pelvis is as light as a feather? And just feel how you do that. It's a really little lift. It's just a boop, boom, boop, boom. And really notice, do you go to a particular hour on your clock to do that? So next time you let your pelvis down, could you take your pelvis toward 3 o'clock and lift it there? Could you take your pelvis to 9 o'clock and lift it there, that it could still be light? Could you take your pelvis to 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock and it could still be light? So that any part of the pelvic clock you could organise to be, for your pelvis to be light. And what's that got to do with your belly being soft and available to change its shape? Because we're going to keep returning to this during the lesson, this feeling that at any moment your pelvis is light and ready to lift. So how fast could you lift your pelvis? And again, really notice, do you go to 1 hour on your clock to do that, or could you do that at different hours on your clock? No? That your pelvis could be light and fast to lift when your weight's distributed a little bit differently on your feet. Okay. So keep your legs bent and your feet standing. Could your left hand hold your right wrist above you, somewhere above you toward the ceiling? So your left hand's holding your right wrist. And could you find a way, it's really interesting, nearly everyone's got the same hold except for a couple of you. It's fascinating. Okay. So what you're going to do here is, again, gently use your left arm to take your arm to the right so that your left elbow is going to go toward the ground. And just see how that feels this morning. Really feel, how much of myself do I feel that through? Is there some place that doesn't shift its weight a little bit? That wants to stay a little bit more fixed? Is it the back of my head? Is it my pelvis? Is it my feet? So it doesn't mean that means you have to do a big movement with the rest of you, but that you can feel this constant, this shift of weight through all of you. Okay, then keeping your left elbow over to the left, it doesn't have to be touching the ground, just somewhere really comfortable over there. Could you, hang on, I've got to do this so I get the right one. Okay, so left elbow over to the left. Could you there begin to swing your right elbow up more toward the ceiling? So your right elbow, sorry, not toward the ceiling, above your head. Your right elbow. So your elbows are soft. Taking your left elbow over toward the left, and you're finding a way for your left arm to sort of swing your right elbow more above your head. So your right elbow will be bent a little bit. And then you're going to begin to make a circle. And you're going to feel that your right elbow is going to make a much bigger circle than your left arm. So your left arm is probably going to go a little bit up and down along the floor, but your right elbow, so you're not going to the right here. You're not going to the right. You're staying over towards your left. And you're making a circle where your left arm is sort of helping your right arm, your right elbow to make a big circle through space. It's sort of more going to be above you, but you're not going over to the right. And it'll be easier to feel if your elbows are bent, if both elbows are bent and soft. And can you feel your head could follow that? And as I said, your right shoulder's doing a much bigger movement than your left shoulder. Your right shoulder is doing a much bigger movement than your left shoulder. So you're staying over to your left. You might go back to the middle a little bit, but you're not rolling to the right. You're not rolling to the right. Very much about going to the left, maybe a bit back to the middle, over to the left, back to the middle. And you're finding this softness and ease. Feel your way. And you're looking for absolute ease. Your head soft. Your eyes soft, so your head's coordinated with this movement of your arms. And keep it light, so you're never really straightening that right elbow. You're finding a way to do this, that what you're looking for is more and more softness through your torso, through your upper back, through your first rib. Your head follows your arms. And then find a way to do this where your eyes could go in the opposite direction to your head and your arms. So your eyes can go in the opposite direction. So you're not driving this from your legs or your pelvis. They're absolutely part of the movement. You're not driving it from there. It's coming from this circling of your arms that's taking you into action. So we're getting how the movement of the arms can pull through us. And go slow. This is when your self-direction really comes in. Any of these movements, you're really having to find out, what are my eyes doing? Are they going in the opposite direction? How do I find this way that my eyes could be soft? Head's going with the arms. Huh? So your head's going with the arms. It's a little bit like the movements you were doing yesterday, where we're really playing with incredible habitual patterns of use. So could you find ease here? So your intention stays soft. If you haven't changed the direction of your circle, you can change the direction of your circle. I'm just going to rest again whenever you like. I'm just going to read a little bit out of the transcript here because I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. It is not a simple thing to change a lifelong negligence. It's not just a matter of changing the pattern in the brain, changing the muscular organisation. The bones and joints have formed in accordance with how we have used ourselves. And this is extremely important to know. Once we have a bone structure that has been formed by 20, 30, 50 years of use, that bone structure cannot change instantaneously. The brain structure can, enabling quick changes in muscular organisation. But skeletal reorganisation takes longer because the bones and joints have to form to the new use. And that is why we cannot immediately get the thing we want. It will take time for the structure to be changed by the use, and the rate will depend on your age and state of health, but it will improve. There is not a thing in a living body that does not grow and improve. And despite the present inadequacies of the skeleton, it is still possible to get remarkable improvements in movement. But these improvements are not final. They will continue according to our learning and adopted ways of using ourselves, because the bones and articulations will improve too. So it's a really interesting way because we talk so much now about the plasticity of the brain, the ability to change patterns in the brain, and the influence this absolutely has to have on our muscular organisation. But it's really always important to remember the structure. So I think this becomes more apparent when you're working with both yourself over a long period of time with Feldenkrais and with clients. So the woman that I was telling you about before, who, when I first started seeing her, nothing moved in her torso. Really, there was not even any point in trying to get her ribs to move or her vertebra to move, because they were just one big piece, which explains, if I'll do a little bit what she used to be, which is, this was all set in concrete. Sort of explains why she's had 2 hip replacements, 2 knee replacements. Well, they were the only things that could move because nothing in her torso could move. No? Shoulders giving her problems because nothing could move in her centre. Nothing. And I probably started, we've known each other a very long time, probably 20 years, I would say, we've been working together. And over that time, that's when she's had her replacement. She's got, if anyone ever wants a great orthopaedic surgeon, whoa, boy, have I got one in Perth for you to see. Yeah, but he's just brilliant. He's just unbelievable. Anyway, and I shouldn't, only charges Medicare rates, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, that's beside the point. He's a brilliant surgeon, and he really looks at the people and how they're organising and what needs to be done. But what's been really amazing is as the years have gone on, he's in Perth, the movement that is starting to come through her torso. That I can now go in and we can move, still small movement, but things move. Her ribs change. She's actually got a little bit, and what that's done to her breathing has been unbelievable, to be able to have a torso that begins to move. But as I said, what's so amazing is to see, because I would have predicted that those things can't change. You know, my physio brain 20 years ago would be, no, you can't change it. Yeah? You can't change the structure. And it's just unbelievable. So that from being here, she's now up here, and she can even get a little bit of contralateral in a walking. Huh? But she's inspiring. She goes to the pool 5 days a week. Huh? She realises how much she has to pay attention, you know, what she needs to do in between the sessions. So I probably see her once a month probably, and just give her something new to keep working with. But she's been really amazing for me to see that process. But I think what's been just as amazing is, you know, to see the process in myself and to feel those parts of me that I never thought could move. And they do. They actually do start to, to do something. And that's with all of you. So, you know, a lot of you have got places in you, especially chests, I would say, especially the ribs, these areas going into the spine are areas for many of us that aren't that mobile, which is why I think, you know, I'd postulate why so many people need hip replacements or knee replacements, because they don't have this give through the centre that lets them shift their weight to find different ways of taking the force. What do you think? What's happened? You know, where's the head position for a dowager's hump? Anyone can give themselves a dowager's hump. No, really. I'm not saying that there are not, some people do have different structure, but generally that's what's going to give you a dowager's hump. Your head is not supported by your torso. And I must admit, I had a bit of a wake-up call because I was just doing an advanced training in Sydney, and I was doing all this really fine movement of, you know, the head movement, and they were videoing it, and they showed me the video, and there I am with this. And I'm thinking, oh, get those shoulders into your image, Julie. No? And that's why it's great to see ourselves on video if we can bear it. No? Just to see where are the bits. And this for me is a classic still to leave out of my image, even though I work with my arms all day. Okay, so now, could you do the same to the other side? So your knees are bent up. So now your right arm's holding your left, right hand's holding your left wrist. And again, keep your elbow soft. You're not pulling that elbow straight. You're not pulling the elbow straight. Huh? Because we really want this movement to be coming from your torso, your upper back. Whereas as soon as you're pulling that elbow straight, you're doing it more peripherally. And we're really seeing if you can begin to get a sense that your arms are just this soft lever into your upper back, your neck, your head. And so now your left elbow will be making a bigger circle. So how do you hold your wrist? Do you hold on top of, do you hold on the back of the wrist or the front of the wrist? Does that influence? And you're allowing your head to follow. Feeling how that movement is winding through your middle, down to your pelvis, down to your feet. And once you've found a really easy quality to it, could you again begin to move your eyes in the opposite direction? And can you really find so what's this ability to pay attention to multiple things? That one doesn't have more importance than another. So usually where we get a bit lost with doing this is we're trying to attend to one thing's more foreground, whereas what you're looking for when you're doing these sorts of movements is everything is of equal value. That you can just keep moving your attention. Everything's of equal value. And you're just finding a way to attend to this and move on, and attend to this and move on. But nothing grabs your attention. You can't do this with focusing your attention. Again, in this, we're looking for a particular state here. And is there something about this state, this ability to just keep shifting, not focusing, that allows something to soften in your middle? Something to become a little bit more available. Okay. And pause, legs long, arms long. Do you notice now what happens after doing those movements of just keeping your attention moving, keeping it spreading, including all of yourself? Keeping that quality of self that you have, could you roll to your right side? Keeping that distributed attention. That you can feel all of yourself. Could you have your right leg so that it's bent forward? So that just make sure it's bent. It's going to be a little bit of a, you'll find where you need it to be as we go on. And could you take your left arm and your left leg toward the ceiling? Long toward the ceiling. and they need to be toward the ceiling. So don't worry if your leg has to be bent to do that, but you want them up facing toward the ceiling. And could you find a place where they can be light? So just play around a little bit. And how do you distribute your weight? How do you use this right knee in front of you? Where do you want your right arm to be? Maybe in front of you as well. Maybe under your head. Find somewhere where you feel you can find a little bit of lightness in your arm and leg. And then could you begin, if we say that 12 o'clock is the ceiling, 11 o'clock is coming across toward the front of the room, 1 o'clock is toward the back of the room. So 3 o'clock is going to be behind you. Does that make sense? You don't want your clock, so I can tell you're getting confused. Okay, so 12 o'clock is to the ceiling. We'll have 1 o'clock in front of you. 3 o'clock will be the floor. 9 o'clock's back behind you. And 6 o'clock's through the ground. Yeah? So it's a great big circle. Let's, yeah? No, it's here. But it goes down through the ground. Huh? Okay, so could you gently begin to explore 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, back to 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Just those hours, no more. Leg and arm together. No, not a clock. You just 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, back to 12 to 11. So can you feel to do that? You have to roll over your right side. So how do you find a way to do that where your right side can soften, that your right leg can stay on the ground? Your right knee can stay on the ground. There you go. Okay, so what's achy? So you can feel this isn't very light at the moment. Okay, what about if you put your hand under your head and let your weight roll forward a little bit onto that hip a little bit more? Does that help it be a bit lighter? Yeah, because you want to go back there and this wants to lift. So you have to just stay within the range where this knee can give you support, but you're not rolling out of your base of support. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So just find where it can get comfortable for you. And you're really trying, it doesn't matter if you can't, that your arm and leg are traveling together through space. And really feel as you do that, what happens in your torso, because it won't be staying just one constant shape. It'll have to be changing its shape a little bit. So don't let your right knee lift. Don't let your right knee lift. Don't worry if you can't get back there. Don't let your right knee lift. Don't let your right knee lift. There's something about not letting that right knee lift that's going to allow you to find something. You could do the minutes, absolutely. But as soon as you let that right knee, because if your right knee's lifting, what's doing all the work? Where are you getting the movement in? Your hip joint. Huh? And we're trying to discover all the movement through your torso. What your ribs can do, what your sternum can do. Try it on the other side. No, 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 no. That wasn't general. So how do you do this? What do you let happen through your head? Do you allow something to move in your shoulder blade to do it? Some of you might find that to start off, it's a little bit easier if you let your arm and leg rotate a little bit. But you might find your palm goes forward or backward a little bit. Or your foot turns a little bit in space. So if that helps initially, feel free to let that happen. It's a little bit forward, a little bit back. So how do you enact your intention? Again, this is all about self-direction. Now, just this very small movement at the moment. Just finding, how do I refine this just to find a way, 12 to 11 to 1. How do I just hang out? And as I said, the whole key to this is softening in your torso. Your leg and arm will get softer and lighter and longer as they're supported by the movements of your torso. How do I have something that's really challenging to do and find the self-direction in there that I can begin to make it easier, more pleasurable? Rest on your side. Again, take your left leg and left arm to the ceiling. Again, you're looking for the softness in the arm and leg. Soft and light. And now could you begin with, again, your arm and leg oriented up to the ceiling, to bring your leg and arm toward each other and away. So toward each other and away. And to do that movement, what has to change in your contact with the ground on the right side? Doesn't have to be a big movement. You can use momentum if that helps you initially. Then can you begin to find it's really something I'm doing through the middle of me that's allowing my arm and leg to get lighter and freer. So how do your ribs on the right side adapt? Okay. Find a comfortable distance again for your arm and leg to be apart, both up toward the ceiling. And now keep that distance and begin to move both your arm and leg in an upward direction, in the direction of your head, and then back to where they were. upward direction towards your head and back where they were. And feel now, what does your right side have to do to adapt? What has to change in the ribs on the right side? Use contact with the ground. So just up and back to where you were. Just up and back to where you were. Really feel you're on your right side. You're not on your back. And then begin to feel, if you were going to take them down from where they were, that your head could lift to help you. And then you come back to where you were again. And what do you have to change in your underneath side now to take your arm and leg down and allow your head to lift sideways? And it's a sideways lift of your head. All these movements we were doing yesterday. And again, really feel what's happening on the underneath side. How the weight is moving. Ribs have to soften, change their shape relative to the ground. And let it be. Have a rest again. So all these ATMs we've been doing, getting your arms long, legs, and now finding a way that you can have these long levers. And if they're really supported by your torso, to be long and light, that you can feel more and more clearly that it's the shapes I'm making through the middle that are allowing that. Otherwise, I have to start pulling using my legs and arms to propel me. Stay on your left side, your right side. Keep your leg and arm down. So they're just resting. Could you put your right hand under your head so that it's sort of holding your right ear? So your fingers are pointing backwards. Both knees are bent. You can have your left arm wherever it's going to be helpful here. And could you use your right arm to very lightly lift your head? So it's going to be a sideways tilt of your head. And your right arm's obviously connected into your shoulders and your torso. So how do you find a way that your hand, your right hand, can just sit lightly and easily, tilt your head so you can really feel the movement in your neck, feel the freedom in your neck, and how that's supported by something that's happening down in your torso. But the big thing you're looking for is this freedom of your neck, that your neck is soft and able to bend and change its shape so that your left ear is coming closer to your left shoulder. And that there's something you do in the middle of you that helps support that. keep your right hand there under your head. Take your left arm and leg to the ceiling again. Keep your head lifted a little bit, if you can. And does that make your arms and legs lighter for some of you, that your head is lighter, that your head's a little bit lifted and bent? And then again, take your left arm and your leg up and down a little bit relative to you. And feel when your head lifts, so your head and your arm are always staying in the same relationship. So you're starting with your head lifted and bent to the side. And then as you're going up and down with both your arm and your leg together. They're not touching, no, they're both going up and they're both going down. And you're finding a way to keep this relationship between your head and your arm. And then maybe you could find a way that your left hand and your left leg could reach toward each other. What could your head do then that would make that easier? Would you lift your head? Has it got something to do with this side bending of the head, of your head? Of this ability for your ribs to soften on both sides, but one side gets a little bit longer and one side gets a little bit shorter. And then if you can hold your leg, could you move up and down in that position? A little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down. Gently, this is the self-direction again. A little bit up, a little bit down. And what's it got to do with your neck being soft and able to side bend? And then repeat it again with your arm and leg apart. Just a little bit up and a little bit down. With your arm and leg apart. And has that made any difference? How your right side has to keep softening and adapting to the ground. And have a rest again. So if you were going to think of that configuration on your back, that's exactly the same configuration that you were in on your side, and we just transposed it to your back. Where would your right leg be? Where would your left arm and leg be? Where would your head be? How could you get into that same position you were just in on your right side on your back? And when you think you've got an idea, do it. Where would you be? Where would your right leg be? Where was your... Go back to your side. Find it again on your side. What shape were you in when you had your head lifted and your left arm and leg long to the ceiling? So if you rolled 90 degrees, where would you be? Where would you be? Hey. It's really interesting, isn't it? This ability, how do we transpose from, and again, this is where he's making this point about we know it in one orientation. How do we know it in another? So can you feel that if you're on your back in the same orientation, your right leg is standing, your left arm and leg are out to the side, lying on the floor, and your head is side bending to the left. Yeah, to the left. Side bending to the left. Yeah. But where's your leg? Where's your leg? Your left leg. Where's your left leg? Where was your left leg? It was up in the air, wasn't it? Yeah? So where would it be? It's going to be out to the left. That's okay. But you've got, that's better. Yeah? It's on the ground over to the left somewhere. Yay. Can you feel how your head allows you to get into that position more easily? Yeah. So it's that bending of your head that actually lets your arm and leg, your left arm and leg, get long on the floor. Yeah. So in this position, could you begin to slide your left arm and leg up and down on the floor? No, your right leg is absolutely still standing. But this is side bent. See how you're turned? Your head is turned. It's side bending. It's not side bending. So how could you side bend your head to get... No, that's turning. You have to keep looking at the ceiling, exactly. Your nose is still toward the ceiling. Yeah. Yeah? Okay, so can you slide your head and your arm and your leg along the floor? Doesn't have to be a big movement, but everything moves together. Your head and your arm and your leg. So it'll really help some of you if you've still got your right arm under your head. Clear as mud, Martina, I can tell. Clear as mud. Thick, very thick mud. So if you were now going to reach your hand and your leg toward each other in this configuration, again, what's it got to do with this side bending of your head? This ability that your nose is still toward the ceiling. Your nose is still toward the ceiling. That's the trick. No? Because that's what's going to allow your ribs to get soft, long, softer, shorter on one side and longer on the other. It's just out to the side. It's long out to the side. No, no, no. You're just sliding up and down relative to you. So let your head side bend, Amanda. There. Yeah, now do it. And feel the difference if your arm and leg move toward each other or if they go at the same. What has to happen differently in your torso? is there somewhere where it's just possible for your leg to start to get longer? So your head will be translating on the floor. Yeah? And then, as I said, you can do it with your arm and leg, keeping the same distance going up and down, or you can hold your arm and leg together and then move up and down. And feel they both require different organisations through your torso, different ways to soften. And it's this ability to keep your nose to the ceiling. And yet it's exactly the same movement you were just doing on your side. He's just transposed it 90 degrees. Isn't it interesting? And we get it in one position and we transpose it and it's like it's a whole new world. What do you think?
I don't.
So do you have to be using... So one big question is, as you're doing it, is your pelvis still light? Is your pelvis still light? Because your head's not moving, Bruce, I know nothing's happening in your torso. Yeah? You're just doing it with your hip and your shoulder. Yeah? Something has to be moving in your head. Huh? So wherever your arm goes, your head goes. Wherever your arm goes, your head goes. Okay, have a rest on your back. What's happened? So think about it, when you were on your right side doing that, when you were on your right side, it was your right ribs, the right part of you that was doing all the adapting when you were on your right side doing those movements. Once we transpose it this 90 degrees, which part of you then has to be doing all the adapting to the movements? It's your left more, yeah? So it's very, very clever how he does it, how he sets it up. It's by transferring that 90 degrees, you've got to find a whole new way. So by staying on your right side initially, your left side doesn't have to do the work of bearing weight, so it can get lighter. And then how do you transpose that? Come onto the left and it's now bearing weight and it can still be really light and easy. And again, it's not important that you understand those dynamics of what he's doing. At the moment, it's not important. What's important is your sensory motor experience. So, come up to standing. Actually, no, before we do, could you do your pelvic clock again? Just see, how does that feel after that lesson? Which was a pretty one-sided, we were sort of doing just one arm and leg, but does anything feel as if it's woken up in your movement? Any part of you feel a little bit more alive? And do you know where that is? Could you put your hand on, for yourself, on what's the part of you that's somehow been allowed to be part of the movement more? That you're not inhibiting as much. Okay, so then could you go back to your partner? And you're just going to observe them again doing this pelvic clock. Just to see. And the partner, the person on the thing, don't tell them where you think the difference is for a start. Yeah? You just observe them doing the movement and get a sense of where you think the difference is. So where you think the difference is. And then the person who's doing the movement, the doer, love that, Silvana, the doer, could you put your hands where you feel the difference is? Huh? Good. And swap over when you're ready. So you're just seeing if what you're observing and what they're sensing is similar or not. And then the doer can put their hands on where they feel the difference is or what's been included in their image. And, really feel free to share with each other what you saw as the differences. It's really wonderful when someone actually gives you some feedback about what you're doing. Mm. Mm. And when you're finished, we'll take our break.